January 2021. New year, new you. This year is going to be different, right? We've all had the feeling of starting the year with a high, starting a new workout plan or waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning, and we do that for a couple of days until slowly but surely life gets in the way and wears down all our good intentions. In this video, I want to talk about why your habits don't stick and what you can do about that. The question I want to ask today is not why we fail, but rather how to take control, make these falls less painful, and how to spring back more quickly when it does. Before we talk about implementing any changes, accept the fact that your life will not go according to your plan. That is part of the process. The sooner you accept that, the better. Once we all stop resisting this reality and being in denial, we can start focusing on the change that can radically improve our life in tangible ways. The first thing we need to do is take responsibility. There's nothing particularly exciting about that, but we all have a deep desire to want to improve ourselves in one way or another. Most people will have a $1 million idea in their lives, but very few will see their plan through and get the intended results. That tells us that the hardest part is not having a goal, but having the ability to stick with it until the end. The past does not define you. All those new years where you've made plans and they failed, that doesn't define you. As soon as you realize that you and you alone are responsible for your actions, you can't hide behind denial and fear of not achieving those things. It's down to making sure that you've got the right habits and the ability to stick to them and get back up when they fail. If there's anything you remember out of this video, it's to take action. As long as you're standing still, you're not going to get any closer to achieving your goals and achieving your dreams in your life. You can plan all you want, and I'm a massive fan of making beautiful plans, but as long as you're standing still, that plan is not going to serve you well. Think long term down the line. Where do you see yourself in 10 years, in 15 years? And why do you see yourself in that place? Why do you want to achieve those goals? It's important that you have those in place and that you've internalized that you are responsible for making those happen. That brings us on to our second point. Focus on the small wins. We all have a tendency to be a bit too ambitious and not very realistic with our goals and our habits. It's often the case that we don't really understand how our human mind works and how we think. The key is to break it down. Make it so easy, so achievable to score those points, to score those habits. If your goal, for example, is to run a marathon and you tell yourself that you're going to run 5 kilometers 5 times a week, something that may be potentially achievable for you, but the resistance to actually achieving that habit may be very high, especially in the beginning, and getting up every morning to do that 5k may be so difficult that you end up dropping the habit altogether and you never get to do that marathon. Treat your mind like a child. Break it down and make it something that's so achievable that you think, this is too easy for me. So for the running example, find what's easy for you. That could look like running twice a week for 2 kilometers, and you think, well, that's too easy, it's almost insulting. Do that for a couple of weeks. Make sure that that becomes a habit, and over time that will become a massive change. And even if it seems like something small, somebody who last year didn't run a single kilometer, this year is finding themselves running twice a week 2 kilometers. That's a much bigger change in the long run. So start with what you can 100% do and be the tortoise and not the hare. Once you've figured out how to treat your mind like a child, you then need to figure out how you can outwit your inner child. Your brain will come up with 1,000 creative ideas of why you shouldn't do said thing and why it's not a good idea to go out running in the rain because you may get sick, or if you wake up at 5 a.m. you may be in a bad mood all day, which may be true, but the point is you want to make it as easy as possible for yourself to stick to those habits. So here you want to build a system that helps you remember to do your habit and helps you stick to it so that there's the least resistance possible. Again, with our running example, make sure that you have a calendar, something like this that you can use to cross off every single day that you go for a run. Make sure that your sports clothes are laid out in the morning, ready to go. Know your weaknesses. If you tend to wake up in the morning, reach for your phone and start scrolling through Instagram, at least put your phone underneath your sports clothes a few meters away from you, and that way you have to get up and have to reach under those clothes. And all these little things make it much easier for you to stick to that habit and reduce resistance as much as possible. Control your environment and make sure that it works for you rather than against you. We all know that sticking to habits is a difficult business, so you want to make it as easy as possible for yourself. That brings us on to our next point, which is that consistency trumps complexity. The painful but simple truth is that we are what we repeatedly do, so it's important to set yourself targets. Anyone can sit down and set a list of targets, make a list of habits and say, that's what I want to do. That's the easy part. The hard part is finding a way to make those actually stick and make those realistic. One tip that I found really helpful was one by Matt Devella. He devised a 2-day rule, and typically that means that he can take a day off from his habits and plans, but never 2 days off in a row, because he's noticed that that's the number of days for him that puts him in a slump and makes it difficult for him to get back into his routine. While I did find that useful, I felt like there was something off and it was a bit too restrictive for me. What I've come up with instead is a minimum list. So I have an A list of habits and a B list of habits. The A list is sort of the master key, the ideal realistic things that I want to achieve for the year. And that could look like a weekly breakdown and a daily breakdown of running very regularly, reading a certain number of books, etc., etc. My B list is the absolute bare minimum that I need to achieve no matter what happens, and it's non-negotiable. Typically on my B list, so my non-negotiable list, there will be a level of exercise, so for example running, a daily religious practice, so for example making sure that I read Quran every day, and a weekly social practice, so making sure that I catch up with family at least once a week. On my A list, there may be some goals that I have that I want to achieve, for example painting regularly and developing certain skills, but they are not the non-negotiable ones. And I find that by splitting up my habits into two, no matter what happens, even if it's difficult to stick to all of them, when things get overwhelming, I can draw back and stick to my non-negotiable B list. And that gives me something really strong to hold on to and stops me from falling too hard when life gets in the way and I can't consistently stick with my habits. And I do these lists for the type of habits, and I also do them for the frequency. So I know that, for example, for exercise, my ideal and realistic goal is to run 4 times a week, but my non-negotiable goal is to make sure that I exercise twice a week. Similarly, I try to keep in touch with family and friends much more frequently than once a week, but if all else fails and if my week's not going as planned, I need to at least make sure that I set aside some time to do it once in the week. So having my ideal A plan and my non-negotiable B plan with adjusted frequencies really helps me stick to a basic minimum and helps me get back up quickly. The key here in the B plan is to make sure that that really is a non-negotiable list of things that you can definitely achieve even in a bad week. So reflect on what those things are for you and what things are absolutely non-negotiable in your life. This brings us to re-evaluation, which may be one of the most important points in this video. It is incredibly important to have the ability to be flexible when things aren't working. Are your habits too ambitious? Is your A list too unrealistic? Is your B list too heavy? Are you not enjoying the type of exercise that you're doing? Does the intermittent fasting that you've started doing get in the way of your family relations? Personally, I think that one of the most valuable skills you can develop is the ability to be flexible and re-evaluate when things aren't working. And that's not to say that you failed or that you've not been able to achieve your plans. Rather, you've got a final destination that you want to achieve, and the way that you're achieving that isn't working for you. And sometimes the final destination changes and you decide that that's not actually what you want in life. And at the end of the day, the most important thing you can do is realize that and readjust your course, readjust your plan of action to make you content and make sure that you're heading where you want to go. Let's talk about accountability. Never underestimate the power of checking in with someone. And I'm not talking just anyone. You don't have to tell everyone about your goals and how you want to achieve them and what habits you're trying to develop. Tell people who actually want to support you, people who uplift you and will motivate you along your journey. That can be a group of relatives, loved ones, or even one person who can really hold you accountable. In literally every area of my life, whether that be exercising, reading books, having a regular religious practice, they have all been more productive and efficient by having accountability. It reduces your ability to create excuses and generally makes the whole experience more enjoyable. So if you don't have it in place already, try and recruit somebody who can help you along your journey and be your best cheerleader. The best relationships are when it's mutually beneficial. Now I know that we're halfway through January, but that's the point. This process can be done at any time, and in fact it should be done regularly throughout the year so that you're re-evaluating consistently. So I invite you to sit down and take responsibility for your life. What do you want out of your life and why? How can you break those things into small wins? What do your A and B lists look like? What's your non-negotiable, the absolute bare minimum, and at what frequency would that work for you? How do you make your environment work for you and get some accountability to benefit you? I hope that these points benefit you as much as they did me. I'd love to hear what your non-negotiable list looks like in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe to help the algorithm, and I will see you in the next video.